Buongiorno. I really wish I could be with you there in person, frankly more for my sake than yours. I'm the one missing out on all the great food and all the great pasta. And we'll return to pasta before I'm done. But first, a quick story about 3 peer-reviewed publications and 5 places around the world. The first of the 3 peer-reviewed articles appeared more than 20 years ago, in 1993, in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It was written by Mike McGinnis and Bill Foege, entitled Actual Causes of Death in the United States. Now, it referred to the U.S., but frankly, it's true of developed countries all around the world, including Italy. When we talk about the leading causes of premature death, typically we rattle off diseases: heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, dementia, and so on. What McGinnis and Foege pointed out is something that maybe should have been obvious all along. Diseases aren't really causes. Diseases are effects. And in that brilliant paper, they elaborated the answer to effects of what? And the answer, which accounted for virtually all of the premature deaths here in the U.S. and, by extension, all around the world, was a list of 10 factors we actually can change. And for our purposes here today, what matters most is that 80% of the action was just the first 3 things on the list. 80% of the premature deaths in the U.S. each year are attributable to tobacco, poor diet, and lack of physical activity. And again, this is true really all around the world. So that was an important paper 22 years ago. Let's jump ahead to the second of the 3 papers, 2009, The Archives of Internal Medicine, this by Earl Ford and colleagues, entitled Healthy Living is the Best Revenge. It's the other side of the same coin. What Ford and colleagues looked at is what happens if people don't smoke, eat well, are active and control their weight, or do the opposite. And the answer, in a cohort study of over 20,000 people with health outcomes followed for entire lifetimes, was in the people who got those 4 things right, didn't smoke, ate well, and I'll come back to that in a second, were active and controlled their weight, an 80% lesser rate of all major chronic disease. Now imagine if a drug could do that. This is the power of lifestyle as medicine. And for our purposes here today, talking in particular about food, here's the beauty of that study, especially at a time when there's so much controversy about the healthy way to eat. They defined healthy eating as habitual intake of vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. Period, end of story. No discussion about specific fatty acids or diving into the minutiae. And that was enough. Enough for what? To differentiate people who had an 80% lesser lifetime risk of all major chronic disease from people who had an 80% higher risk. Absolutely stunning. That was in 2009. And then the third of the papers is my own. It was published in 2014. It was a commissioned review in Annual Review of Public Health entitled, Can We Say What Diet is Best for Health? And my answer to that question, after a comprehensive review of the literature with as much suppression of any bias as I could possibly imagine, was yes and no. We cannot say what specific diet is best for health because, frankly, we haven't done multi-decade randomized trials comparing, say, an optimal Mediterranean diet to an optimal vegan diet. We're not likely to do it either. But if what we mean by best diet is a basic dietary pattern, then absolutely yes, we can say what's best. In fact, Michael Pollan did a pretty good job of it in his New York Times Magazine story in 2007, Food, Not Too Much, Mostly Plants. So plant-based diets, real food close to nature. I've written about it as well and described it as wholesome food in sensible combinations. Minimally processed food, lots of plants, and frankly, whole grains are a prominent feature. So those are the 3 papers. What about the 5 places? The 5 places reaffirm what the research literature has been telling us for at least the past 2 decades. And these 5 places are the world's blue zones. They're described by National Geographic fellow Dan Buettner, and they represent those populations around the world that live the longest and have the best health. They enjoy the ultimate prize, really, longevity and vitality. And what's really interesting about the blue zones is that they are so much alike and yet so different. If we think of the key components of lifestyle as medicine, I routinely describe them as what we do every day with our feet, physical activity, our forks, what we eat, our fingers, not smoking, and getting adequate sleep, mitigating stress, strong social connections. I call that love. So it's feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love. That is the six-cylinder engine of lifestyle as medicine. In all of the world's blue zones, they fire on all six of those cylinders. But the beauty of the blue zones description is also in the variety of them. One of them is in Italy. It's in Sardinia. One of them is in Greece, in Ikaria. One is in Japan, in Okinawa. One is in California, in Loma Linda, and one is on the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. These populations have diverse lifestyles, but quite similar in terms of their health-promoting properties, and they have very diverse diets. Obviously, it's a relatively high-fat, traditional Mediterranean diet in Ikaria and in Sardinia. It's a low-fat Asian diet in Okinawa, Japan. It's a vegan diet among the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, and it's a different kind of omnivorous diet in Costa Rica, but in all cases, real food, mostly plants, and for our purposes here today, whole grains figure in all of them. Now, of course, pasta isn't always made from whole grain. Personally, I prefer it when it is. And here's the thing that's most relevant to this conference. Whole grains are consistently associated with health benefits. Now, of course, some people can't eat gluten. That has to be considered, but most of the population can. And all things being equal, the addition of whole grains to diets is associated consistently with better health outcomes. It's true in intervention trials, it's true in observational studies, and it's true in the world's blue zones. Pasta obviously can be a source of whole grain, and when it is, it's contributing directly to health benefit. When pasta isn't a source of whole grain because it's made with refined grain, it can still contribute to good health depending on what's put over it. Traditional dishes, for example, like pasta fagioli, contribute to health because of the beans and what's in the sauce. So I think we've got some options. My personal preference is whole grains, but I think it's good either way. Another noteworthy thing about pasta specifically is that it has a relatively low glycemic index and load. If you take the same grains to make, say, bread or pasta, the glycemic effects are consistently lower in the pasta because of the way that pasta is made. One thing for sure, grains and pasta figure in some of the world's healthiest diets and some of the world's most delicious diets. And really what we're looking for, I think, is to put those two things together. Because sure, I'm a physician, I'm a public health guy, a lot of this story is about good health. But I like good food as much as the next guy. And I think the sweet spot for all of us is loving food that loves us back. You don't have to eat pasta to have an optimal diet and optimal health, but you can. And since you can, why wouldn't you? So again, I'm really sorry I can't be there in person. I'd love to be enjoying meals with you. But for now, that's the story. So grazie mille, ciao, and buon appetito.